In this video, you will learn to compare the value of different integers, to determine the opposite of a number, and to determine the absolute value of a number. Now, as we begin, let us first discuss different types of numbers that we have learned about in the past. So we have, first off, what is called natural numbers. So natural numbers would be the numbers you learn as a little child. So when you learn to count, you learn 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Those would be considered natural numbers. Whole numbers would start at 0 and then work your way up 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And then we have integers, and integers would include negative numbers along with the 0 and the positive numbers. And we see here the symbols for each of them as well. N for natural, W for whole, and then Z, I'm not sure why they chose Z for this, but that is the symbol for integers. And if you want a way to remember the difference between maybe natural and whole numbers has the 0, which looks like a hole. Okay, different spelling, but 0 looks like a hole, and that would be your list of whole numbers. It starts with 0 and works your way up from there. Now with numbers, we can create what is called a number line. And this is for all the integers. So negative numbers, 0, and positive numbers. So here's a number line. It's simply a line with all the numbers on it. So we usually make sure that we have a 0 there, and the positive numbers would go in order, going to the right, so 1, 2, 3, etc., to the right. And then the negative numbers would go towards the left. So the more left you get, the smaller the number. The further to the right you go, you have bigger numbers. So just take note that with the negative numbers, we do need a negative sign to represent that they are negative. But with positive numbers, we don't need a positive sign. And then 0 is neither positive nor negative. The 0, there's a special name for the 0 because everything is basically starting at 0 and working from there to the right. You have all the positive numbers, and from there to the left, we have your negative numbers. So because everything is really starting at 0, the 0 is called the origin. Okay, origin simply means the beginning. So it begins at 0, and then left and right we have the other numbers. Now on a number line, we can graph different things if we would like. So for example, we could be graphing these different points. So graph point A, where A equals 4. Graph B, where B equals -3. We can graph C, where C is -7. So here on the number line, if you're graphing a point, all we need to do is plot the point on the graph. So looking at 4, we find 4 on the number line, make a point or a circle, and we can label that as point A. -3 is over here, so put a point at -3, and that is point B. Same thing for C. We find -7, which is right here, and we can label that as point C. If you are told to create your own number line and graph particular points, okay, for example, D is -2, D is +2, E is -2, you would begin by creating a line and then a little tick marks along the way. And the main numbers we need would be the origin, and then you would want the points that we were asked to plot. So you don't need to write every single number on the number line. So if we have the 0 here, that is sufficient. And then point D is at 2. So if we go over 2 this way, that is +2, and that is where our point D would be located. For -2, we go the other direction 2 places to get right here, and that would give us our point E, and we just put a point there to represent that. So number lines Pretty straightforward. Just you have to make sure you have the 0 there and then at least your points that you're plotting. Okay, next with numbers we have what are called opposites. Opposites are two numbers that are the same distance from 0 but in opposite directions. So for example, if you were asked what is the opposite of 10, that would be simply negative 10. That is the opposite. So you're just basically changing the sign. So if it's positive, it becomes negative, and then if it's negative, like negative 6, the opposite would be a positive 6. And that's because on the number line, those numbers are the same distance from 0. Okay, and then 0, the opposite of 0 is simply 0. There's not really an opposite to that. Okay, next with numbers, we have what are called absolute values. Absolute value, by definition, is the distance from 0. Okay, the symbol we use would be right here. So the little bar that's straight up and down, we put the bar around whatever we want the absolute value of. And in English, this expression right here is read as the absolute value of x. So take note, the definition of absolute value is distance. And distance will always be positive. So that means the absolute value must always be positive as well. So, for example, find the absolute value of this number. So in this case, absolute value of 4. All that means is how far is 4 from 0? So if you wanted, you could create a number line. It's not really necessary, but you could. Here's 0. 4 would be 1, 2, 3, 4 over here. How far is 4 from 0? Well, the answer clearly would be 4. 4 is 4 away from 0. So we would say the absolute value of 4 is 4. Or in other words, the distance of 0, or distance from 0 to 4 is 4. If you had the absolute value of negative 4, that would be over here, 1, 2, 3, 4. How far is negative 4 from 0? Well, it's the same distance, it's just on the other side. So if we were to count, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 4 away, so the absolute value is 4. In other words, the distance from 0 to negative 4 is also going to be positive 4, okay, because absolute value is distance. Here's another one, the absolute value of 12. How far is 12 from 0? Well, that is simply 12, because the distance from 0 to 12 is going to be 12. And then absolute value of 0, how far is 0 from 0? Well, that is just 0, because the distance from 0 to 0 is going to be 0. So if you notice, basically we're just making whatever's on the inside, making it positive if it's not already. So this negative 4 becomes a positive 4. Here we have absolute value of negative 18. This becomes a positive 18, because the distance of negative 18 from 0 is simply 18. Alright, moving on to what are called inequality symbols. So this is a way to express which numbers are bigger or smaller. So we have maybe greater than, means things that are bigger, and we have less than, or things that are smaller. So the greater than symbol would look like this. So for example, we would say 5 is greater than 0. Okay, so this would be the notation, and this in English is how you would say it. So notice that this mouth is facing the bigger number. So if you can imagine this being a mouth, okay, it's facing the 5, which is the bigger number. And that's going to be always the case to make a true statement. Okay, less than would be facing the other way. Using the same expression, we would have 0, and then the symbol, and then a 5. That means 0 is less than 5. So notice still this mouth is facing the bigger number. Okay, it's facing the 5. Alright, so make sure that with every expression, that mouth is always facing the larger number. So the way to remember greater than versus less than, some people might struggle with remembering which one is which. So one way to remember is that the less than symbol points to the left. So you imagine this as an arrow. It's pointing this way. Alright, it's pointing to the left. So the less than points to the left, and always take note, as we mentioned, the mouth always faces the larger number. So here we're asked to compare numbers, and we have here -8 and 0. So the question is, which symbol goes in there? Which way is the inequality symbol going to face? Well, 0 is bigger than -8, so the mouth is going to face the 0 because it is bigger than -8. So the symbol would look like this. And in English, we would say -8 is less than 0. Okay, this is the less than symbol. Here's another example. -8 and -4. What would your inequality symbol be to connect those two numbers? So which number is bigger? Well, -4 is actually bigger. It is closer to 0. -8 is more negative. So when you write your symbol, you want the mouth facing the -4 because -4 is bigger. So my symbol would look like this. And in English, we would say -8 is less than -4. Here we have 4 and -6. Okay, which number is bigger? Well, the 4 is bigger, so we can write this with the symbol facing the 4, where the mouth is facing the 4. So this would be written like this, with that symbol, and in English we would say 4 is greater than -6. Next we have -3 and -10. Which number is bigger? Well, -3 is bigger because -10 is more negative, making it smaller. So our symbol would have the mouth facing the -3. So your symbol would look like this, and in English we would say -3 is greater than -10. Alright, lastly, if we have multiple numbers and we want to compare these using inequality symbols, the question is, how would you do that? So the instructions are here. It says write in order from least to greatest by using this less than symbol. So the smallest number would be -8, and then -3 is the next biggest, and then 0, and then 4. So if you wanted to use the less than symbol to show that we have -8 is less than -3, -3 is less than 0, 0 is less than 4, we could write it like this, where we connect each of these numbers with a less than symbol. So if you just look right here at this part, -8 is less than -3. Okay, that's a true statement, so that part's good. And then looking at -3 and the 0. -3 less than 0. Okay, that is a true statement as well, so that works. And then we have 0 is less than 4. Okay, that's a true statement as well. 0 is smaller than 4. So what we've done right here is we have simply put all the numbers together using the less than symbol to show the order from smallest to greatest. And that concludes our lesson for today.